So now, our speaker. So our speaker is Drew Raessler with Cobb County DOT, and he's going to talk about transportation investments in Cobb. So in August 2021, Drew Raessler was appointed director for the Cobb County Department of Transportation, where he was previously serving as deputy director. He began his career with Cobb DOT, holding positions in traffic operations and construction. During his time with Cobb, he has led construction of critical roadway projects in advance of the new Braves Stadium, oversaw completion of the 2050 Comprehensive Transportation Plan, and worked to deliver numerous transportation improvements through 4 MSPLOST capital programs. Between 2016 and 2019, Raessler was the Director of Transportation and Public Works for Athens-Clarke County. During his nearly 3 years in Athens, he oversaw completion of the first comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian master plan, a stormwater utility review, and implementation of over $40 million in capital improvements. Originally from Woodstock, Georgia, he attended the University of Georgia, where he studied agricultural engineering and served as a member of the Redcoat Marching Band. After graduating with a bachelor's in engineering, he accepted a position with Cobb DOT. He also earned a Master of Science in Civil Engineering from Kennesaw State University in 2016. Away from work, he enjoys spending time with his family, which includes his wife, Lauren, and 3 children, Rosie, David, and Chloe. So help me welcome.
Well, welcome to Cobb County. Thank you so much for showing up today. You saw as you checked in our traffic management center. We're very proud of that facility and all that it encompasses. We're ideally located here next to the dump, the jail, and the office. So we're very proud of our facility. But we have a fantastic team here at Cobb DOT. That gets set up. About 200, or a little more than 200 employees here for full-time staff, and then we have a program management team, consultants that help us deliver our critical projects as well as our transit staff. So again, welcome. So glad to talk to you today about transportation investments. In order to really dive into transportation investments and how we're looking at some of the new funding coming out of DC and some of the other opportunities that we have in terms of SPLOST here with the county, I felt it was important to set kind of base level. What's going on with transportation in Cobb County to set some context before we really dive into how we are looking at a county level the opportunities ahead of us. So with that, I've broken the presentation really into 3 sections. Where are we making strides? Where are we struggling? To be open and honest, we do have our struggles, and then where are we going in the future in terms of the IIJA and a term that we've made up called mobility SPLOST, and what that means for those that reside and visit Cobb County, as well as the transportation industry and what opportunities exist there. In order to talk about transportation in Cobb County, I think this is one of the largest milestones, the biggest milestones of the last several years, really of the last several decades, and what it not just what it is, but also what it represents. But we as a county, we as transportation professionals often get into a mode of what is our silo, what is our mission, and we look so heavily at the borders, within the borders, and we all know this as those that drive around and families that drive around and visit different areas of Metro Atlanta. The only people that really seem to care about the boundaries are those that work inside those boundaries, are responsible for inside of those boundaries. And what this represents, this is express lane transit and looking at the opportunity of connecting transit across the top end. Is all of these various entities, Cobb County included, have broken out of silos and come together and said, how can we look at transportation in the overall region? So in 2021, and many of you know this, but in 2021, Cobb County approved a memorandum of agreement with the various partners here, ARC, ATL, GDOT, MARTA, Gwinnett, to fund planning and conceptual engineering study and participation with the regional agencies for rapid transit, for that east-west connectivity. Started as an idea with the Brookhaven mayor and many of the other mayors across the top end. How can we just make this connection make more sense and go from being strictly vehicle-centric and opening up transit for the broader region? GDOT came along and said, how can we be partners in this as well? And it's really been this symbolic and real monument in terms of transportation, of being able to think across jurisdictional boundaries and what it represents for Metro Atlanta. So something very, very exciting. Another area that we as a county have been making strides in is in resurfacing. So when someone comes to Cobb County, before they see our facilities, our parks, our libraries, our amenities, see our roads, it's the first and lasting impression. And what this very difficult to read chart demonstrates is in 2006, so at the left end of the chart, our overall condition of our roadways was pretty good. It had an OCI of close to 65. As a network, that was something that we were comfortable with, that we weren't over-investing in resurfacing, we weren't under-investing. We were hitting that sweet spot of having our asphalt, which is our highest value capital dollar fixture that the county owns, being in good shape. Well, since that time, like many other counties and municipalities throughout the state, throughout the country, increasing prices and decreased budgets really got us on both ends. And we saw that large trend line that goes through. Well, it's the large trend line where you can see that we went from a 65 in 2006 to where we were at an overall condition index of 52. And so we had a lot of roads that were in the failing and very poor condition. With the most recent SPLOST, so that special purpose local option sales tax, that's where the vast majority of our capital funding comes from. It's from the 6% sales tax in Cobb County. 4% goes to the state, 1% goes to the school district, and then 1% comes to the general county government. And in the program that just began at the beginning of this year, we saw a 230% increase in resurfacing budgets. So that represented $64 million, was about what we had in the last 6-year program, now going to $213 million. So again, just for that comparison, $64 million in the last program. Just this year alone, 2022, we have led $57 million worth of resurfacing contracts throughout the county. So we're seeing a lot more in terms of taking care of our most valuable asset in the asphalt. Unfortunately, that came at a time when prices increased due to outside factors, but we did see significant increase in investment in the number of roads getting resurfaced. Another area that's going really well is joint operations. And in this picture, some of you may be in this picture. We're not too mad at you for coming into this mess. But joint operations. So many of you know the Braves won the World Series, and very, very exciting. And Cobb County, as well as the Braves, successfully managed 8 playoff games, as well as 3 World Series games here in Cobb County on any given night during the playoffs. And we saw this increase. And if you were down, you saw this. It was a mass of people. There was 100,000 people on the footprint of the Battery. Not a very big area. A lot of interest, a lot of great energy. It was really neat to see. Those events operated not too different than a typical ball game, where we've got a joint operation with the Braves and with PD, where PD puts an incident commander down in the ballpark. We have traffic engineers that are there. We run our adaptive system. We've got it down to pretty much a science of the ingress, and fortunately people are getting there early for the World Series and playoff games. They got there even earlier, and then as the night goes on, really the release of a concert is in a lot of ways more challenging than a baseball game because everyone stays to the end. But that operated fairly well. But then as we started seeing the Braves were doing really well, they were we saw the end of, well, what if they actually won the World Series? So we brought up, call up, right, well, what if y'all win the World Series? Okay, well, we won't talk about anything publicly, but we kind of need to talk, no, we can't talk about that. Like even the office staff, obviously the team and all that, doesn't want to jinx it, but baseball being what they are. So they won the World Series November 2nd. They began engaging with us about a potential parade on November 1st. And our initial thought was, hey, the city of Atlanta would love to host a parade. Our elected officials did not like that. And they really wanted something here in Cobb. We said, that's great, just don't do it on Cobb Parkway. So we did a parade on Cobb Parkway. And it was all hands on deck. We really shut down everything that we were doing. We sent everybody out in the field. And the success here was that we had our staff, Georgia State Patrol, GDOT came with PD. We had the hero units all sitting upstairs working together, watching this on camera, watching it unfold. And a couple real quick stories about how it ended up going so well. You can see the picture there. We had between 400 and 500,000 at the parade. To put that in context, there's 750,000 in all of Cobb County. So now 2/3 of the county coming all to one spot, and on a major arterial corridor that has more than 50,000 vehicles per day, 285 interchange. You can imagine the challenges. Was as we closed it, and it had to be a phased closing. When you close it too early, no one can get there. You close it too late, you're endangering pedestrians. As we closed it, we got to the point where we were about to shut down the 285 ramps. We shut it down to the south of 285. We were getting ready to go to the other side of the ramps. Cars were still coming off of 285. They were just all being asked to turn north. We're all watching it, and cars are stacking up, and it's about to stack up onto 285 and all the problems that come with that. And I'm telling the traffic engineers, you guys got to do something. You got to add more time. Just wait. No. You got to do something now. Just wait. Well, our adaptive system was able to recognize the increased volume, the unusual increase there, and how long they were stacking, and the saturation was there constantly. It was able to handle that traffic, and it dissipated very quickly. The signals adjusted. I see. Our friends at Transcore are very, very excited to hear that. It was truly a testament to SCATs and how well that worked. Another, we had really the best spot to watch the parade was on 285, because you could see them coming down the hill and then going back up. Obviously not a location we wanted people to stop and watch the parade. As soon as we saw that, we were able to talk to GDOT, to Georgia State Patrol. They had someone out there within minutes. They were able to get them to move along so that there weren't any safety hazards, and thankful that ended up going very well. Definitely nerve-wracking. Another area that's going very well is program delivery. Cobb County has a great history of delivering projects in partnership with our CIDs, with the state, and that continues, and I'm excited to see that continue. A couple of the projects up here on the left is Windy Terrell Connector, and that project will actually open early, we anticipate, in October. It's one of the few remaining new alignment roads that will connect between Windy Hill and Terrell Mill, parallel to 75, just to the east of the interstate, to provide an additional north-south route. And on the right, you see a bridge replacement over CSX Railroad, just north of Marietta, another project that's gone very well. Nearing construction or about to kick off is South Barrett Reliever, which will create a new connection. South Barrett has gone in a number of phases, but it's created a southern reliever to Barrett Parkway that goes east and west. Will jump over I-75. That project will get kicked off very soon, and is anticipated to actually decrease traffic on Barrett Parkway by more than 20%. All the things that are going well, we do have our struggles. One of those, like many of the other counties and cities throughout, is our drainage infrastructure. And we, in the 70s and 80s, when Metro Atlanta had explosive growth, put in a lot of metal pipe into the ground with 25, 30-year life expectancy. Here we are 40 to 50 years later, and we're seeing it fail. Not unexpected, but it has been a significant problem. Actually, over the last 6 years, what we normally budget over a 6-year period, we are spending in a 12-month period. So our spend has gone up 6 times in just trying to keep up with these failures. A couple of incidents that have happened. It seems like once a week we're getting one of these, but in one case we were having a drainage pipe failure on a dead-end road with 100 homes on the back end, and it was going to go quickly. There was only one way in, one way out. We were able to get in there and take care of that very quickly. Otherwise, we would have had all the utilities emergency access to this neighborhood cut off. Another, and it's actually the picture you see there on the left, is Leland, where the area developed, again, 50 years ago. And that large spill has failed with the drainage infrastructure underneath it and will require a 50-foot braced excavation to get down there. So these are not $100,000, $200,000 projects. In some cases, like Leland, they're $2 million projects. We have 27 projects in the queue. At any day, we could get a call that it's failing and we need to move on it much quicker. We're running up against, like all of our projects, contractor availability, material lead times, and then just, again, the increase in volume and severity of them. Like many of you, we're struggling in staffing. Not just in our office staff, which we've been able to keep most of those positions filled, but in our frontline staff, our most critical boots on the ground. We have, for 2,400 lane miles that Cobb County takes care of, 104 road maintenance staff that do that work. Right now, we're 35 vacant of that 100. So if we do the quick math, we go from about 23 miles per staff member to 35 miles per staff member, and the challenges that come with that. Traffic signals, we have 12 traffic signal technicians that take care of 550 traffic signals. We're 5 vacant right now, which means our preventative maintenance, which is one of the most critical things that we do, catching problems before they become public problems. This year, we've done 140 preventative maintenance inspections. Our target is 280. So we're about half of where we need to be. Same thing in signing and marking, struggling to get that frontline staff. Fortunately, our board has supported increased pay for them, which will hopefully help us with recruiting. Y'all, litter has become a huge problem for us. And I know this is wandering away from the nuts and bolts of traffic engineering and transportation engineering, but it is having a severe impact on our ability to take care of the transportation infrastructure. This picture represents 1 month that we dedicated to litter, 160 man hours, 100 tires. That pile is 16 foot tall and 35 feet deep. All from 1 month coming off the road. That's 27 tons of trash that we pulled off of the road. And this comes with increased demands otherwise and decreased staff. Of our 6,500 work orders every year, our number 2 item, number 1 is potholes, number 2 is litter in terms of requests. And it continues to be a challenge. So with that as context of where we're seeing things go really well and where we're struggling, that really gets us into looking towards the future. Traffic management technology is one that our staff has done a fantastic job of over the years, and again, in partnership with the private sector and with GDOT. A few of those highlights are the CD1K project that we're looking forward to getting more than 160 connected vehicle intersections ready to go. A project has had some challenges getting off the ground with licensees and some of our infrastructure, but that project's going very well. We have robust fiber connectivity and actually redundant fiber connectivity so that we're in a lot of ways cut through. Where we were having before a contractor go out, accidentally cut the fiber, it would knock us out for a period of time. We've got redundant loops on much of our system, which led to us needing to figure out an alarm because we were getting cuts and not knowing about it because our system was still operating. Traveler information systems, our adaptive signal control, and our waste partnership, all ways that we've continued to look at traffic management technology, not just technology for the sake of technology, where we see good benefit cost. And a brief story on why I'm excited about connected vehicles. A lot of use cases and many more to be identified as we get them going. But emergency vehicle preemption is something in an area where we see, just in this example, a lot of potential use for. And this is Station 19 over on Powers Ferry Road between Terrell Mill and Windy Hill, where we were talking about that new alignment. And our fire department came to us and said, look, we're having issues even with, they've got a signal right there. They've got their lights on and their sirens. We roll out and nothing happens because no one has anywhere to go. They see us, they want to get out of the way, but there's nowhere to go because we're right there at Terrell Mill, Windy Hill to the south. Our traffic operations team partnered with them and looked at one signal to the north, two signals to the south, put actually a pedestrian push button in the station that they could push and say, we're going this way or we're going that way. And so that's just part of now their pre-work before they hit the field. They push that button and then it rolls out a green carpet, to use a term from another event, where it makes those signals green, releases that cue, and they're able to get going. Once they're going, they're able to navigate traffic. It's just that initial getting out the door. And in all incidents, they saw a drop in travel times by 11%. In special emergency incidents, they saw travel reductions of 8%. So very small scale, really just 3 signals that were used in this particular case, but large improvements when we're talking about seconds, meaning a huge difference. That leads into federal funding. Congress passes a major infrastructure bill. Cobb County, what are we doing? How are we going to spend that money? And we've had some hiccups, some challenges of getting really engaging in a meaningful way because of some of the challenges we'll talk about going forward. But we have had some early wins through the earmark process. And I said that in a public meeting, and I was quickly corrected. It's not earmarks, they're congressionally directed spending. So we've been successful with congressionally directed spending. In FY22, this is a listing of the projects where we were successful in awards. We saw the Chattahoochee Riverlands pilot project, which is the diagram on the right. Phase 1, we already had funded. Phase 2 was able to get funded through the congressionally directed spending, through the earmark. And this is a fantastic project, which will ultimately connect from Beaufort Dam all the way through Metro Atlanta on the river, really activating the river. So often we drive over it, we drive by it, kind of forget that it's there, and it's this wonderful ecological and cultural resource that has a rich history in and of itself. And this project is really designed to activate that and bring that out. Cumberland multimodal path, segment E, big shade widening, some improvements in the city of Kennesaw, as well as Payson's Mill, Palisades, and another park there on the river. So we've seen a lot of congressional support for the projects in Cobb County. Moving into FY23, that Congress has already started some work on. These projects have received a level of support. South Cobb Drive, traffic safety, that's down near Dobbins, where there's a 4-lane undivided section that has some opportunity for safety improvements. Intersection up on Cobb Parkway, as well as Johnson Ferry, Shallowford, the South Cobb Transfer Center, looking at some transit improvements in the southern part of the county, as well as a couple trail connections, including also Powder Springs, connecting those 2 cities in the southwest part of the county, and Noonday Creek Trail crossing. Currently, Noonday Creek, I was talking to Robinson about Noonday Creek Trail, a well-loved trail, a well-used trail. What we were seeing is many of the trail users coming from Kennesaw Mountain would get up to Cobb Parkway, if you know the area, turn around and go back. Many of those coming from Town Center would get to Cobb Parkway, turn around and go back. The crossing, the at-grade crossing of Cobb Parkway being something that certainly I wouldn't want to cross with my children in a stroller. And so an exciting project to be able to grade and separate that trail crossing. And then to grant programs, and this is where some of the challenge has come in for the county is many of these new programs need a qualified plan to be able to apply. So the Safe Streets for All is a good example. we've been doing safety planning for years and have had a lot of great improvements, but we don't have a plan that checks all of the boxes of the SS4A program. Same goes for some of the EV funding that's out there and others of having a qualified plan and then going through the fairly lengthy application process, which is involved on our end to get it through our board and then up to DC for review, and then going through the federal delivery and procurement process. The other challenge is locking up funds in an application. So again, I talked about how SPLOST, we're 95% of our capital improvements come from SPLOST, the sales tax program. We set aside intentionally funding to go after funds, federal funds on. In the last program, it was $50 million. Because we were so squeezed and wanted and to do so much on resurfacing, we're at 25 million for the current program. 25 million is not going to go very far, especially when we need the 20% match. And not only will it not go so far, but the more applications we put out there for these discretionary programs, of course, we've got the ARC TIP awards hopefully being announced soon. We've got money that we're setting aside that we're kind of putting into categories of, well, if we get awarded this, we'll apply those funds to it. So our local match, and I've heard this from the state and from others, that our local match will really be our primary limiter on how much we're able to leverage these funds, in addition to some of the process items that come with that. So we're actively seeking funds, though, on the SS4A program. I'll speak about our strategy just very quickly here in a moment. The FLAP program, where we're able to get some funds where federal land is involved. The RAISE, we have 2 RAISE applications out there, actively considering the railroad crossing, the reconnecting communities, the SMART program, and the BRIDGE program. And I'll speak about these discretionary programs very briefly through the SS4A, because I think it illustrates where we stand. We were looking at submitting a planning grant because to get an eligible qualified plan to be able to go after construction dollars in the future, if you are familiar with that program. When we started doing the math, okay, when we apply this year, it'll be October, awards announced sometime next year, and then we've got to procure for the plan. We're well past the next call for projects before we have a plan in place to be able to go after construction dollars. We're missing 1, maybe 2 future annual cycles for this product just in going after planning dollars. So our intention is to put out a locally fund a plan ourselves that is qualified for this. Try to do that across other areas where there's interest. Have that in place, so we'll end up missing this year in exchange for being ready to apply and be ready to accept funds in future years, and really begin to leverage those dollars, not so much for the lower hanging planning funds, but for the bigger hitting, more impactful construction dollars. Which leads us into a term that Cobb County has termed of mobility SPLOST. And we've really made this from a combination of looking at the single county T-SPLOST, that's the 5-year eligible under House Bill 170, and the up to 30-year transit SPLOST. We've matched them together and called it mobility SPLOST as the board tries to get their feet under them and understand where they want to take the community, what investments they would like for the county to really prioritize. And I'll be transparent, it's been a challenge. The board has changed, our Cobb County Board of Commissioners has changed, not getting into left or right politics and how that relates to transportation, but we went from a board that was 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat to a board that's 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Anytime you have a change like that, it's a re-examination of everything that was done prior. Really, it doesn't matter. It changed the names to protect the innocent. That same reaction happens anywhere. And that has happened in transportation. Well, do we want to continue to invest in traffic mitigation and traffic type improvements, or do we want to do what the county has not done since the original MARTA Act over 50 years ago and invest in a meaningful way in transit. It does look like that is the direction they're headed, but they recognize we do continue to still have issues in areas where we can improve safety, improve multimodal connectivity. That's not necessarily for transit. So I say that to say we're still in progress. We're still trying to wrap our arms around exactly how we move forward and how we invest in this time with so much going on at the state level and the federal level and in everyone's just daily lives, how the county invests future transportation dollars that will need a referendum to many people is back burner at best. But the county is growing. I mentioned we're at 750,000 today. We'll be at over 1 million before 2050. 80% of the commuters drive alone with an average commute of 31 minutes. And that's only going to increase. And as we reach capacity on many of our roads, it will not increase incrementally. It'll begin to increase exponentially as we get to that breaking point of many of our major arterials. Despite the work from home phenomenon that we saw through the pandemic, as you saw, I'm sure, getting here, much of that has subsided in terms of traffic being back to where it was pre-pandemic. And then with aging infrastructure, you see where our traditional capital programs, where we've done a lot of great work, has had to increasingly shift more. That's why I show information about drainage and resurfacing, because we've had to shift much of our investment into the nuts and bolts of taking care of what we already have, rather than doing more in terms of technology, doing more in terms of safety improvements and capacity improvements. So with all that, though, 2024 does look to be the year that Cobb County will bring forward a MSPLOST proposal. Again, I anticipate that to be primarily in transit. To cover that a little bit further, these are a few of the scenarios that we are looking at. Starting on the right, moving to the left, we looked at rail. Rail's very expensive. And what we were able to determine is if we just did one rail connection from Cumberland down to Morrow, just given where the current Morrow stations are, what we are left with is largely the transit system that the county has today, which is more of a commuter bus system with a rail connection. That even over a 1% sales tax for 30 years, that collects $6 to $8 billion, we're really able to just get one really good rail connection to connect Cumberland to the MARTA system would be phenomenal for the overall region, but the cost of that are seen elsewhere in the county. On the other end of the spectrum, if we have one lever to pull, that's productivity and heavy rail and high capacity. The other lever we can pull is coverage. How can we cover more of the county with a transit network? And that's what that middle graphic shows of how we would be able to expand further into West Cobb, further up into East Cobb. Right now, our transit system largely comes down the 75 corridor and the balloons out between Cumberland and South Cobb. With this coverage scenario, we could cover more of the county, but again, where we were gaining rail in the first scenario, we lose it in the second scenario and really are just left with continuing to operate more of a bus-centric transit system. And then finally, that balance scenario that you see on the left is really where the momentum is currently. Of how can we use the transit investments and improvements that we've seen over particularly the last 20 years in areas of bus rapid transit, and that's what I intentionally showed this picture. This is the health line up in Cleveland that Faye talked about in St. Simons, where there is a lot of productivity, a lot of high capacity in terms of the transit connection, but it's a rubber tired vehicle. And so it is a bus rapid transit that has the look and feel of light rail. And that does appear to be the direction, but the challenge that we as transportation professionals have with that is socializing that. As soon as someone hears bus rapid transit, they stop listening after you say bus. I know what buses are. I know I'm not going to ride a bus. Thank you very much. And how can we normalize, socialize, help folks understand exactly what it is that we're talking about? They'll make their own decisions based on what's in their best interest. but we need to start from a point of having really solid and effective education there. A few of the other elements that, the key elements that we are really hitting on is looking at the full county. How can we encompass the full county in whatever we're doing so that someone sees the almighty, what's in it for me? Because that's what the decisions will ultimately be based on, particularly given that any additional investment needs to be approved via referendum. Bus rapid and arterial rapid transit service primarily, expanded local route, going to that 30-minute frequency, expanding our on-demand. This is an area of conversation that we've had very recently with our commission, where if we look at some of the areas, particularly out in this area or in West Cobb, East Cobb, where very well-developed residential areas, very suburban in nature, it doesn't have the density to support high-capacity transit, or even in a lot of cases, bus transit. But you have an aging population that would love to stay in their home and is able to stay in their home. They just can't drive anymore. Uber and Lyft are available, and that's kind of the initial thought. Well, we just get an Uber to the grocery store. Well, it's not. Uber and Lyft want to live down near the Battery. They want to stay around the square. Getting out to further parts and less populated parts of West Cobb just doesn't make sense for them. And how can we fill, as a county, fill that gap in the private sector with a public service that allows for that dignity and aging of being able to age in place? Transfer facilities at key locations. I mentioned the Austell South Cobb Transfer Center, which is down here near the airport at Austell and East-West Connector. That would be one new facility, revamping the existing facilities at Cumberland, which is currently across from the mall, and it's just a long strip. With all that's going on in Cumberland these days, it's past time to revamp that facility, find a new location, and really bring a lot of the amenities and accessibility that is needed. Same in Marietta, which is our really central transportation, as well as how can we connect to it? So it's not just the buses and the bus rapid transit. It's what is that last mile connectivity when we get to the folks to the stop they need to get to? How do they get to their end and final destination? As well as, and our chair has spoken about this often and very publicly, about being regionally minded, of breaking beyond it. And this is where we can kind of end pretty close to where we started with the express lane transit. Of thinking far beyond the boundaries of Cobb County and thinking truly about the region as a whole. How can we expand and help out Douglas County and Paulding County and Cherokee County, because the development patterns that are happening off of the Northwest Expressway in up near Canton or up in Carterville have a direct impact to transportation in Cobb County, because many of those drivers are coming through, just like the development in Cobb County is having a very direct impact in North Fulton. So how can we think beyond just our jurisdictional boundaries and our traditional walls and think regionally and how we can build something that benefits the entire region, and then finally looking at paratransit and our less able riders and how they're able to access that. So with that, I'll ask you to stay tuned and look forward to your participation and your input as we continue to answer the many questions in front of us. Should be a fun 2 years before that referendum. Thank you for your time and for coming.
If you go back to the MSPLOST, there were some red lines to BRT. Could you just describe some of those and where they go and what they collect?
Absolutely. So the question, just for Palma, is the red lines for BRT, where they go and what they connect. Primarily, it's the Northwest Express, or the Northwest Corridor. If we look at the history of Cobb County, it grew up around the Western Atlantic railroad. I won't go into the full 300 years of Cobb County. But that's where we have 4 of our 6 cities, Smyrna, Marietta, Kennesaw, Acworth. The other city that was looked at with bindings all along that railroad. And if you look at the density of the county, it all comes off of that corridor. So generally the Cobb Parkway, the I-75, that Western Atlantic, that is the spine of the county. We have, the Battery is there, 3 of our community improvement districts, Kennesaw State University, all within a few miles of that general corridor. And so that's the primary, where you see Cumberland is down bottom right, goes up through Marietta, and then to Kennesaw State University, which is now the second, third largest university in the state, in a very populous area of the northern part of Cobb County. So that's the primary spine that is served with bus rapid transit. This does show an offline of Cobb Parkway. Very briefly, that's to be determined in some of the future analysis, whether it goes offline or stays online on Cobb Parkway. And then we have connections out, while this is the spine, the northwest part, the southwest part of the county is isolated. There's not an interstate very close. It's a hike to get down to I-20. It's a hike to get over to 285. And so that's where we bring Marietta down towards that hospital triangle, down on Offdale Road. And then from that hospital triangle, in some form or fashion, getting from that part of South Cobb in towards H.E. Holmes, which would connect us to the western part of the MARTA system. From there, we come back up 285, and the Express Lane Transit, in partnership with GDOT and ARC and ATL and everybody else, that will ultimately connect from H.E. Holmes all the way to the other side of 285 and move its Indian Creek MARTA station on the other side. Which again will be a fantastic. I heard in a meeting, a commute now that would take an hour and a half, it's going to take 15 minutes. We start really getting into having transit be not just a comparable travel time, but a competitive travel time, which is enormous. And then from while it's not BRT, a connection from Marietta across to this hub here is Johnson Ferry and Roswell Road, over towards North Fulton and Sandy Springs to connect into a lot of the work that's going on now on the 400 corridor with MARTA's expansion to the north through North Fulton. Sir?
Sure, I appreciate the remark you just made about eliminating word bus from your communication. I think it's wonderful changes the conversation because the bias kicks in so inefficient when you use that word. It's rapid transit, it's a great word. So I think
was at a meeting with actually the Brookhaven mayor where he talked about in Tampa, and they're just in the early stages of delivering a BRT system. They've dropped the B altogether and are just calling it a regional rapid transit. Because, and some of y'all may know this, I didn't know this, the plane train down at the airport is a rubber tire vehicle. And so just the fact that so really that's a bus rapid transit facility. But it operates, it feels, it looks, it acts just like transit. High capacity transit.
I'm curious that the transfer facility, there's like the land use planning, around the location for redevelopment and higher density.
Absolutely. The question was land use planning around the transfer facility. That's another grant program that I didn't list that we're very interested in of joint use land planning at transfer facilities and how we can make a transit-oriented development. Actually, the 2 existing transfer facilities is where we've spent the most time looking at that. At Cumberland, the initial thought is to relocate that on the mall property as part of Brookfield, who owns much of that, is redeveloping it with a lot of residential, some commercial space, and taking away the sea of asphalt that is out there and is at all of the malls these days, and really activating that. So that's a big piece of transit in those transfer facilities. Additionally, with Marietta, the same idea that wherever we go, that we leave sufficient space and have sufficient forethought to think about the future land use at these and how it can be more than just a regional transit facility and bring on more of the redevelopment opportunity along with that.
You mentioned a lot about the competing interests, and I can appreciate how you guys put things in different areas. It seems like the water infrastructure has become a need. On the transportation side, is there a plan for signal upgrades, TMS upgrades, cameras, that kind of thing?
So the question was, with the aging infrastructure on the stormwater side, what about the aging infrastructure essentially on the signal side and bringing those out? Absolutely, and that's an area that the board has continued to fund, and an area that we're continuing to roll out more cameras. We've done now, look, how many phases of the ATMS master plan? Three phases of the ATMS master plan where we've brought out additional connectivity. We are getting at a point where we need some signal upgrades to the technology in the cabinets. We have funding for that in the current SPLOST and are in the process of working through the specifics of how we plan that out. Sir,
Are you already using the per signal changes on rapid?
are we using transit priority on signals? We have it in some areas on Cobb Parkway. We're using transit priority, an area where we look to do more of a technology and how we can make our system as reliable as possible. Because we really need to have, and we've looked at it currently where we look at it, is the bus, how many people are on the bus and how are they doing compared to their expected arrival time? And then used it to, if the bus is behind schedule, use it to trigger the signal to catch them up. Really dipped our toe into it. There's a lot more opportunity that we'll look forward to the CB1K project being completed and then rolling out the use cases there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for attending, guys. Help me thank our speaker and our sponsor and Cobb County for hosting us one more time. Please remember to clean up your trash, and if you want to take a handout for the training that we have coming up in September that's on the table, please feel free. So thank you, and see you guys next month.